Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at the new Godox X3Pro trigger, and full disclosure, they did send this out to me for review, but I haven't been paid or sponsored for this video, and as always, I'll give you my honest and fair opinion. So first, let's go over some of the basics of the new X3 Pro, as well as some of the new additional features it has over the standard X3 radio trigger, and then I'll walk you through setting it up and pairing it with multiple Godox flashes so you can get started right away. All right, let's just start with a quick comparison versus the original X3. The X3 Pro clearly has a much larger screen, so it's going to be easier to work with. It also lends itself to much longer battery life. Not that there was ever any problem with this one, but the standby time is like 1 month on this, and it takes a couple hours to charge. Another significant difference here is on the side. You'll notice that we have a PC sync port, which is not present at all on the original X3. So this is really useful, actually, and I'll talk about this later. It has some additional functions beyond just being a PC sync port. And then we have the same USB-C charging port here. It's also used for doing firmware updates. And then coming around to the front, you'll notice that we also have an autofocus assist lamp on the Pro trigger versus we don't have one on here. And then on the side, we have the same buttons here, test fire, power switch, and then also a clickable knob for navigating the screen without using. All right, and just to give a quick comparison against an older XPro trigger, as you can see, this is much easier to read because it actually does have a larger screen, even though the overall trigger is substantially smaller than the old one. And obviously the older one is not touch screen and does give you a more tactile experience, but ultimately I found the workflow is much easier to work with this trigger just using the touchscreen to access all of the functions versus, say, deep diving into the menu to get to the different settings and clicking and changing things like this. All right, let's take a closer look at some of the controls on the X Pro. We have a touchscreen here, so you can see 4 groups at a time, but if you've set up more groups, you can just scroll down. If you want to add more groups, you can do so up to 16 groups, or you can just quickly turn off the ones you're not going to use, like so, and then I can scroll down. I can turn individual groups on and off by touching and holding for a couple of seconds, and then it comes on. Then if I want to change the power for this individual group, I just touch on there and slide. Now, you might be thinking my finger's in the way, but all I have to do is move my finger down, and I can still adjust the power and see the power level very clearly. And if I just short tap on that group, I have additional controls here, like switching between manual and TTL. I can set the zoom level here. I also have access to the modeling lamp, and I can adjust the power here very quickly like that. I can also turn the flash on and off, or turn the group on and off very quickly right there if I want to do it that way. I can also use the dial here to kind of go through all the different groups like this. So if I want to change the power in group A, I just select it, click on the button, and then I can adjust the power in thirds of a stop here. You can also set it to be tenths of a stop, or you can use decimals. Then I can go to the next group, which is set to TTL. And I can adjust the TTL exposure compensation here. And if I push and hold this, it'll deep dive into the group. And then I can change the individual settings this way if I want. But clearly, using the touchscreen is much easier than a series of turns and clicks using the dial. All right, let's look in the menu and look at some additional settings here. We have a Bluetooth mode, which allows you to control the trigger via an app on your cell phone or tablet, so you can control this trigger remotely. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. We have our shoot modes here, so if you're just by yourself, you can select one shot. If you're with a group of people shooting the same flashes but with different triggers, you would select all shoot. And then we also have compatibility with the Sekonic L858 light meter. So if you're doing studio work, you'll appreciate that. We have a legacy hot shoe mode that we can turn on or off, which basically disables all of the pins except the center pin. So this can operate on basically any camera, even though this is branded for Canon. If I put this in the legacy hot shoe mode, I can use this on my Olympus or Nikon cameras if I want. I just lose TTL and high-speed sync compatibility, which is not a big deal. So that's a nice feature. And then we have the auto off feature here to save battery life. We have trigger distance, and I recommend you set this 0 to 30. You'll get less misfires that way, unless for some reason you need to shoot more than 30 meters, then you would select 1 to 100. But make sure you select the right setting here for better performance. And then we have our stepping mode here. So we can adjust the power in fractions, which is more traditional, or we have also decimal settings here if you want to do it that way. And this is also for setting the minimum power. Some of the newer flashes do have minimum powers of like 1/512th of a second. So you would set that here. And then same thing with the decimal system. And then we can do our stepping here in thirds of a stop or in tenths of a stop, regardless of the power setting that we set over here in fractions or in decimals. And then over here we have TCM, which if you shoot one shot, say for example in TTL mode, and then you want to convert that to manual, you would do that here. You just have to select the correct flash. So this is for like on-camera flashes like the V1 or V1 Pro, and then here's like the 8100, 8200, and so on. And then we have a high-speed sync delay setting here. This is also new. I guess if you're having some exposure consistency problems with high-speed sync, sometimes it might be underexposed or overexposed, or you're getting black bars. You do have an option here to kind of tweak the high-speed sync delay. It's not something I've ever used or had a problem with, but it's nice that they've added that. We also have presets here, so once I have everything set, I can save them into a preset so that it's just I don't have to go through the whole thing over and over again. Here's our screen settings for brightness and screen time, so the screen will automatically shut off after 3 minutes. And then language and reset, and then device info shows us the model number I'm using exactly, the X3Pro C. And then this is a firmware version 1.10, which is the latest firmware as of the making of this video. All right, let's go into the settings menu and look at some additional features. Here's the wireless where we set up the channel and ID number. We can also scan for clear channels or automatically sync with compatible Godox flashes. Here we can go into multi-strobe mode if we want. Here we can turn on or off the modeling lamps for all the flashes. Of course, we can control the modeling lamp individually as well, which I showed earlier. This turns the beep on or off on the flashes. Here we have high-speed sync. We have rear curtain sync and front curtain sync. And then here we can lock the touch screen so we don't inadvertently change things. And then to unlock, we just push and hold for 2 seconds. And then here we have our autofocus assist lamp here to turn that on or off. And then finally we have something new here called shutter control, which gives us easy to use intervalometer. So we can use it to do time lapses, or we can use this for bulb mode, or we can use this as just a remote trigger in combination with the app on your phone. What it does is it basically converts the PC sync port here into a trigger port that you would use just a regular 2.5 millimeter jack and plug that into cameras that have 2.5 millimeter trigger jack and control the camera this way. And it's pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward. I won't get into this too much, but I just wanted to show you that. And then to go back into flash mode, we just touch right there. Now we have access to all of our flash controls. All right, so let me show you how to set the trigger up with these 3 different flashes. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a key light, a fill light, and a rim light. And this will be group A, this will be group B, and this will be group C. And to connect these flashes with the trigger, there's a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you first how to do it with the older LCD display type flashes, and then also with the newer touchscreen type flashes. What we have to do is we have to match the channel number and ID number. And generally, I don't use ID numbers. That's sort of like a sub-channel. So we're just going to set the channels to match the channel on the trigger. So the first thing on the trigger, what I want to do is find a clear channel, because a lot of times the 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth can be kind of busy. So if you want more reliable performance and less misfires, go into the wireless setting here and do scan. And we'll wait for this to finish. All right, so it looks like it's given us 8 options here of clear channel. So I'm just going to select, say, channel 6, and then I'm going to leave the ID number off. So what I need to do first is put the flash into receiver mode. So I do that by pushing the squiggly line button here. That's transmitter mode. This is receiver mode. We also have an RX and also changes color. And then I just have to put the flash into the same channel as the trigger, which is channel 6. So I push the channel button here, and I turn the dial until I get to channel 6. Like so, and click OK. I don't need to worry about ID number, but if I did, I would have to go into the menu and go into ID number, and I could select it here. But we're not going to do that. And then I want to make sure this is on group A, which it is. So if I needed to change the group, I could just push the group button here and put in the group I needed to be in. We're going to have it on group A. All right, let's go into the touchscreen versions. So what I have to do is basically put this into receiver mode like this, and I'm going to change the group to B. And then I need to make sure this is on channel 14. Now, I can do it manually this way, where I go into the wireless setting and I can change it to channel 6 like this and leave the ID number off. Or I can push the sync button. So let me change this to channel 1. I can put this into sync mode, and then I can go into the wireless settings and hit the sync button here, and then it'll automatically pair the flash with the trigger settings. And then last but not least, we'll do the same thing. And this is a Flashpoint version brand, which is the same thing as the Godox, just FYI. So we'll go into, again, receiver mode, and then we'll change the channel to channel 6. And then we're going to change the group to C, like so. And then I'm going to go into the menu and make sure the ID number is turned off. And it is. All right, now I have all 3 flashes connected to the trigger, so group A, B, and C. So this would be my key light, my fill light, and my rim light. So I'm just going to use arbitrary numbers here. So I'm going to set my key light to half power. So move up, like so. And then I'm going to set the fill light. I typically like to have it about 2 stops darker for a more dramatic look. So that would be what, 1/8, like that. And then the rim lighting I typically set to the same power as the key light. And I need to turn it on, so I'm going to touch and hold for about a second. And then I'm going to set this to same power, 1/2. So it's already there. So you can see all the power settings match what's on the trigger. And I'm going to just push the test button, make sure that all 3 are firing. All right, so now that we've set up the trigger to wirelessly control the flashes, we can actually set up our phone to wirelessly control the trigger. So what you need to do is download the Godox Flash app, and this is what it looks like. And now I need to connect this to the flash, and it's very simple. I just go into the menu, turn on Bluetooth, and it's pretty quick. Then I go over here to device, and I see it's already connected because it has the check mark. So I can go back, and now you can see it actually changed the settings already now that it's connected. So I'm going to leave group A at half power, and then I'm going to add group B. And group B is a V480. I don't see the V480 in here. So I'm going to pick a similar trigger, or I'm sorry, flash. We'll just say V1 Pro O. And we'll say apply power. And now group B is turned on, and I'm going to change that to 1/8 power, like so. And then I'm going to add group C, and that was also a V1. So we'll do dome light, and that's a V1 also Olympus model. Say apply power, and then I'm going to change this to half power. All right, and then we'll do a test, and all 3 flashes just fired, so we're good to go. So now I can be anywhere in the studio or location and control the flash powers without having to be near the camera. All right, so what I want to do now is show you how to use the intervalometer in bulb mode. So I'm going to put the camera into bulb mode, and then I'm going to go into the settings menu, turn on shutter control, and then we're going to set up the initial delay before it takes the first shot. So we can do hours, minutes, and seconds here. So we'll just wait, 3 seconds, for example. And then the shutter, we're going to set to 5 seconds, for example. And again, we can set that to whatever number we want in there, hours, minutes, seconds. And then the interval between each 5-second exposure, let's wait 2 seconds, for example. And then we're going to repeat that, say 2 times. But again, we can change this to up to 999 if we want. And then what you're going to need is you're going to have to get a cable. This is a standard 2.5 millimeter TRS male-to-male cable. It's pretty standard. You can get these everywhere. I'll plug that into the PC sync port, which is now a trigger port. And I'll plug this and into the camera's 2.5 millimeter trigger port. And I'm in bulb mode. I'm just going to make sure my aperture is where I want it to be. So we'll be at f4. And then we'll set the ISO to 100. And we're ready to go. And I just hit start. And what's nice is you can see what phase of the intervalometer we're in. So right now we're in taking the exposure. Right now we're waiting for the next one. Now it's taking the next exposure. and then it's going to wait 2 seconds for the next one. But we only did 2, so we're all done. All right, so that's an example for bulb mode, but let's say I want to do a time lapse during the day where the shutter speeds are going to be much faster, like 1/250th of a second or something. So all I have to do is put the camera, say, into program mode, and then delay 3 seconds is fine. I'm going to change the duration to 0 and say yes here. Unless I want to do this interval, normally like a daytime time lapse, I might do every 10 minutes, right? But let's just set it to 2 seconds here. And then I'm going to repeat that, say, 100 times, give or take, like that. So there's my time lapse setup. And then all I have to do is push start. It's going to wait 2 seconds. And it's going to use whatever setting program mode decides and do the interval at the setting, in this case, 2 seconds. And what's nice is you can see the counter is counting down. And if I want to stop it, I can just stop it manually this way. Now, very shortly, you're going to be able to use the X3 trigger as a wireless remote and intervalometer. They're coming out with a device called the XR receiver that you would put on top of the camera, connect this cable, and then you can use your X3 Pro trigger just like any wireless remote intervalometer. So I hope you enjoyed this overview of the Godox X3 Pro trigger. I've been a big fan of Godox products, been using them for many years now, and this is another great addition to the lineup. I'll have my affiliate links down below so you can check it out if you're interested. It helps support the channel as well, and it's greatly appreciated. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.